Welcome back to another episode of From the Music Store. This is Jason, and I have a very, very special guest today, Mr. James Dalton, another native New Jersey fellow New Jerseyite, who is a performer, one-man band, one-man actor, stage play, Fringe Festival guy. I have a feeling there's a lot of layers to the onion that is James Dalton. But this is a part of our continuing series of interviewing folks that are doing really cool things in the arts, getting to travel to other places, meet other people, do exciting different things that you wouldn't just think of right out of the box. And I think, James, you tick off a few of those. So
something like that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you could just give everybody a quick background on yourself and what you've been doing, and then I would really like to get into exploring your music and the world of Fringe Festivals.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, as you said, my name is James Dalton. I'm an old man now, and so I've been really lucky to have gotten to do a lot of different things. I studied voice when I was in college. I did music theater in high school. I was one of those poetry writing kids that would, in the 90s would go to a reading and actually read from the page and read the words and all that. And I was interested in trying to be funny. I always wanted to be a funny guy. So already into my 20s, I wanted to be a musician, an actor, a comedian, and a writer guy. I wanted to do all those things. And once I got to be 20-ish, I got sober, and which we don't have to get into before I got sober, but I got sober at 20 and decided to get really deep into the arts. I took singing seriously. I took playing instruments a little more seriously. I started writing more. I eventually in my mid 20s became more of a songwriter person. And, as time went on, I recorded albums. I did a lot. I got to perform quite a bit, that's the beginning of it,
Recently, in the past, I guess, year or so, you've gotten involved with doing one-man shows at Fringe Festivals, and you've been to some interesting countries and places.
Yes.
So maybe you could give us a little bit of info on that.
The Fringe Festival, for those of you that don't know what you and I are talking about when we say Fringe Festival, in the late 90s, in 97, I was attending Rutgers University. And like I said, I was interested in writing songs. I was interested in singing. I was interested in poetry. I was interested in trying to be funny on stage. I was interested in all these things. And I think my whole childhood leading up to this point, when I attended my first Fringe Festival, which was in Edinburgh in 1997. Edinburgh, Scotland is like the big city. Well, it's one of the big cities of Scotland. It's where the castles are and stuff, it's like the storybook land. Edinburgh is a place that, and I'm going to try to do this a very quick history lesson of what the Fringe Festivals are. Edinburgh was the first place to have one of these things. About 90 years ago, a bunch of small theater companies that went to what was known as just the Edinburgh Festival. What is the Edinburgh Festival? Well, for a few centuries, all of the royals and all the nobles and all the people of means that were living down in the south of the UK and in around London, they would flee the south of England during the summertime because it was too hot, too sweaty, too smoky, too gross. And they would travel to the north of the UK up to Scotland, where I think temperatures were cooler and things were easier to manage. Imagine people leaving Florida and coming up to Jersey for the summer. What would happen is all summer long, all of the main, the bigger, fine high arts would travel up there because that's where all the patrons were. So over time, what was called the Edinburgh Festival evolved. So the high arts, the ballet, that was your opera, that was your Shakespeare, that was your Greek tragedies, that was all of that fine, high, elevated art. These 6 little theater companies that had been trying to get into the Edinburgh Festival year after year, which, to be fair, were probably a bunch of freaky deaky people doing cabarets and jokes and whatever. They could never get into the festival. So eventually they said, you know what, we're just gonna put on our own shows in the city. And we'll be on the outside of that main inner circle, and we'll be the cool kids that do late night stuff and da 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 da. And they started referring to themselves as the Fringe Festival.
As outside. If geographically they were on the outer fringe of the
like metaphorically they were like outside of like they were on the fringes of what everybody was looking for, geographically Not necessarily because it was all happening in the city of Edinburgh, just in smaller spaces, just in makeshift places and pop-up things. And the smaller theaters, they would put on all these different productions that were not for everybody, and that's why they couldn't be a part of the main festival where people were doing, Hamlet. So when we talk about Fringe festivals nowadays, that Edinburgh Fringe evolved it's been going for about 90 years since they first started that thing. And now it's turned into this humongous big deal where it's even bigger than the Edinburgh Festival itself. If we just fast forward away from my 1997 experience of going to this big festival, which when I tell you that there are 1,000 different performances a day in the city, I'm not kidding you. There's theater, stand-up comedy, music, dance, all type of different things, lectures, workshops. Every venue might have like 10 shows going on a day, and there could be 10 venues, and there could be, it's crazy. It just becomes this big, massive thing. What you are asking me about, for me, what I've been doing, I can't manage to do Edinburgh. So I brought my feet back into the Fringe world about 2 years ago, going to a place called Brighton in England, which is also in the UK. It's a coastal town, just like Asbury or Seaside, or something like that. It's something that, Jersey Shore kids recognize. There's a boardwalk and a promenade and an arcade and a bunch of bars, and there's even some casinos nearby, and seagulls and the whole thing. It's something we're very comfy with. And I brought a brand new show that I created. I called it Asbury Park and Me. That was what I did, and it went well. It was.
Now, you're from Asbury Park. Is that
I'm actually from Bay Head, New Jersey. If you know where Bay Head is,
but
Northern Ocean County.
The first show you did was about your experiences being in Asbury.
Well, because if what happens when you work in music in this area up here, you're going to find yourself in Asbury quite a bit, because there's been a lot of work there for years. Coming up in this quote unquote business, if you will, a lot of us in the area have even worked at these clubs, like not just played music at them, but I worked in the office at the Stone Pony for a long time. I've done work at the Wonder Bar. I worked at the Saint. I like not just as a door guy, but I'd be all these different jobs, and so it was a lot of being inside on the inside of things, and not just on the stage, but, in the back office. My first show, the one that we're Asbury Park and Me, that was an opportunity for me to share some of these stories and these insights, not only about being a person coming up in a small music town, but it was also about being there amongst it all, like being on the Stone Pony stage, like doing hospitality and having some of these big name legendary people, that I would be taking care of literally, people from the E Street Band, famous characters just dropping in for the night and having to handle some security for them. All that stuff is real. And as far as me being a performer goes, I feel like I don't need the material. I just like to perform. But what I discovered was that there's a lot of this material that has value to people. There's people that would love to hear these stories. They'd love to hear about Clarence hanging out in the back, and me bringing fruit trays to him and stuff like that. Like that's stuff that's, crazy.
When you go to the UK and do a performance at a festival, this one in Brighton, I guess, do people have any idea that Asbury Park is a place? Do they know it because of Springsteen? Do they what?
Well, so for this particular show, when I pitched it, I was really pushing it towards the European Springsteen fan, which there are many. I figured I'd have a base, I figured I'd have some people that would be interested in coming,
Right.
And if I started like marketing to the Springsteen fan groups, they'd hear the words Asbury Park and they'd say, "Oh, I need to go see this guy." But then also I had a bit of a reputation with some of the organizers. They'd seen me in other festivals, but I was able to push the fact that I was a good singer and a harmonica player and all these other things. So I could hit both angles,
Yeah.
Like so, because Asbury Park and Me was a storytelling show, but it was also slightly a music review. So I could use some of my
actually sing, play guitar and harmonic in that, or was it?
Yeah. That was me standing there with the guitar and the instruments, and I would be playing songs. I don't want anyone to compare that show to Springsteen on Broadway, but sometimes it's the simplest way to describe it to some people, telling the story while I'm playing. And not all the songs are written by me. Some of them are by other people. I mean, I do Elvis and I do some other stuff, And so that was Asbury Park and Me, And I did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 97 and 98. And then I came back and did other performances in 2003. I had done another thing back then in 2007, and it was the beginning of this idea that I could sell a piece of theater with just myself telling stories and talking, and that was 2007. But now we're talking about Fringe Festivals. This is where I want to be. I've done the Brighton Fringe. I've gone to the Reykjavik Fringe twice, and I've just Iceland, yes, Reykjavik in Iceland. And the first year I did Asbury Park and Me, and things went well. And they asked me to return, and I returned, but they said you have to have a new show. And I said, okay, great, I'll come up with something new. That there was a process that led to it, but I ended up conceiving Harmonica Lesson, the show, and that got accepted into Reykjavik, and it got accepted into the Gothenburg Fringe Festival, which is Gothenburg, Sweden. And I was just there just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I can imagine that it takes a certain digging deep or psychosis or bravado or confidence. There's got to be a whole mix of things that enable somebody to do a one-man show.
Well, it's a good question. Now, the one thing I have to include is because I have been a guy that sings and plays guitar. What I discovered in 2007 when I was doing my first one-person show, which is a long title we don't need to get into. There's not going to be a revival of that one for a while. But that particular performance was I had some planned out stories that were probably going to be boring, honestly, at the end of the day. It was probably going to be like, I really had a different vision for what I wanted to do. And I got on stage, I made one comment, and like an off the cuff comment, because I was introduced and I wasn't ready yet. The whole audience, for some reason, just took off laughing. Like they didn't leave. I somehow or other, I got the biggest laugh out of nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that felt great. And in that moment, I said, okay, I've got 15 nights ahead of me. I'm throwing my entire show away right now, and I'm going to go for laughs because that feels wonderful. And I did. And what I learned was the reason why I was able to do that is that, and this sounds silly and sounds cheap, but I've done a couple of decades worth of bar singing. If you've ever been to the bar and you've seen the singer, that guy has been addressed in every possible way. He's been heckled. He's been criticized. He's been put demands on, expectations on. And that person has stood there for hours and has had to sing songs over and over and over again to a variety of people that are drunk or not drunk or crazy or angry or whatever. The improvisational nature of being a straight up pub singer is some skill I didn't know I had. You know, I didn't know that I could roll with the punches so well. Like I had been going to stage school, if you will, for all this time. I mean, I'd studied theater and I'd studied acting and I'd studied improv comedy, all these things, but somehow or other, it was the being on a bar stool, not literally a bar stool all the time, but the bar stool roll with it really, really came to bat for me. It really. And so when I do like a one person show nowadays, like not only do I not have fear of performance because I enjoy it, but I have no fear because I've had all of it happen in every bar.
Whatever could happen has already happened.
Yeah. And when I say that I've been a bar singer, like it's not just like I played the bars of Asbury and Seaside Heights. No, I've had contracts where I played 30 days straight in a ski bar in Switzerland, and I had all the employees of the hotels come every night and ask me the same 4 songs 4 times a night, and it was completely madness. I've done Irish bars all over Germany and in all these places. I had a contract where I played 30 nights in a row without a day off on a boat that sails between Stockholm and Helsinki to a bunch of ragingly wasted Finns and Swedes, and had to handle them. Not just expect me to be playing in the background. No, they needed to be in my face making requests after every song, like, go, go, go. And I was like, trying to catch up, like strumming my guitar and stomping my foot. And so I've had like really intense audiences up in my grill that I've had to roll with, and I don't have their language to be able to, like, a lot of them speak English, but the drunker they get, the less English they speak. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
that's funny. The drunker I get, the more German I speak.
Yeah. So I've had to roll with the punches without relying on my language to do so. So there's a lot that I've learned from having all these crazy, bar singer nights,
Wrap this back up to a little bit while we're talking. So you have a new show. It's called the Harmonica Lesson. And
It's called Harmonica Lesson, the show.
and it sort of spawned out of your experience in Fringe Festivals, which were smaller, makeshift, converted, funky
Hmm.
places, which is similar to our place, Waterview Cafe, which
Hmm.
is it's a small art gallery, coffee shop with a stage. So you're coming to do that with us over
Uh,
at Waterview Cafe on October 19th, right?
hmm. Yes,
So,
very excited.
and now this is basically the same show that you did overseas at the festival or festivals for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's a bit of improv and chain and things that go with it. But what would the audience expect to see? So are they
Well,
coming
so
really to a harmonica lesson, or is it a show about a harmonica lesson? Is it a guy? What's happening?
so just to give you the quick vibe, the inspiration for this show, right? Because when I at some of the things that I've done in the past and other things like either at blues festivals because I play blues music and all the different arts festivals, including the Reykjavik Fringe, I have also offered beginners harmonica workshops, and I have been a teacher at some music schools, so I would give beginners harmonica workshops at like at Ocean County Music, for example, in Point Pleasant Beach, because I was a teacher there. And what I found is that I got hired. Someone saw me in Reykjavik and back here in Jersey, and hired me to come give her and her brother, whose birthday was, and their friends a harmonica lesson. And what I found was that like a few of my workshops felt like I was doing a show. Like it felt like the show didn't stop. Like I felt like I was in front of the audience. I was cracking jokes. I was running wild with things. I was doing all this, but all the time teaching the lesson at the same time. I was like, gosh, this itself could be a fringe show, which is something I think a lot of fringe people say about any ridiculous, silly thing. But the idea is that what I'm offering is so harmonica lesson, the show is what I did in Reykjavik and what I did in Gothenburg is that I start off, I'm very introductory with the audience. We get to talk, we say hi, and I'm trying to build a rapport with them. And the audience gets to choose. There's 3 different harmonica lessons like that happen here. There's 3 different. They're all beginners, but it comes in the setting. So the settings that I'm offering are like we can either do this like I'm sitting in the small teaching room at the music store, or we could do the one where like you saw me at a show somewhere and you invited me over and I'm teaching you a private lesson at your house, or we could do a lesson where you and your significant other are sitting in the park and there's a street performer over there and it sounds really cool and you want to go find out more about what that guy's doing and you want to learn more about what that person's all about. So you go approach them and say, "Can you teach me harmonica?" And the audience, the idea is that the audience is not trying to learn harmonica, but they're trying to solve their problems by trying to become more of a street performer person. And so those 3 things get offered out, and the audience usually sort of agrees on one mostly, and we go from there. And
does everybody in the audience have a harmonica?
sometimes people do bring harmonicas with them, but I actually teach in such a way that you don't need to have them with you, and I teach very basic stuff, like right out of the box kind of stuff. I'm not going to teach you a lot of theory. Anyone that leaves the show can go buy a harmonica at the store, pull it out and operate it and make music with it just from what I've been able to teach. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, so you don't need to bring one with you, but if you've never played before and if you don't have any musical skill, you can walk out of my lesson with what I've taught you and actually make music on a harmonica that sounds not bad. At least comparable to Bob Dylan. And everyone
right.
seems,
or Alanis Morissette.
or Alanis Morissette, exactly. And everyone seems to like them, so it's like, all right, fine. And there's a whole laundry list of harmonica players out there that aren't doing much. So I can give you the skills to sound nice, or to be expressive, and that's it. So you'll get a whole lot of crazy stories. Hopefully you'll get some jokes that are funny. I try to shoot from the hip as much as I can, depending on who's in the audience, because every audience is different, and I want to engage with the audience. This is what the exhilaration light is for me. That's the show for me. Performers, whether we're doing a fringe thing or we're just playing a concert somewhere, we have our goals. We have our own goals that only we know about. And it's not that it's a secret. It's just that I have what I'm trying to achieve at every performance, whatever that may be.
As a performer, I have my own selfish questions. So if you go to Edinburgh or whatever, and there's 1,000 performers there, 1, where are you staying? 2, how are you eating? 3, are you even sleeping at all? And
Yeah.
four, do they, with that many performers, I mean, do they pay people? Do you get a stipend? How do you make these things like physically work? Like, how do you get there? What do you do when you're there?
So to be what makes this whole Fringe Festival thing seem less appealing to everybody, the we're all independent producers pretty much. It's not a pay to play thing, but it's almost like a big trade show, because the idea of a Fringe thing is that they want new work. It's new work trying to get off the ground. Usually in every situation, cream rises to the top. So the people that are selling the most tickets have really great work, and that's the stuff that's going to last for the whole year after this festival is over. So for example, if August is the Edinburgh Fringe, let's say there's like I said, 1,000 different performers there doing something, or performances or whatever. A small percentage of that is going to sell really, really well. I mean, some of it is a bunch of ridiculous, silly shenanigans, and some of it's incredible. There's a large variety. There's a zillion stand-up comedians doing shows. There's a bunch of everything. You go there, you're paying for your own ticket, you're paying for your own room, you're paying for your own food, and the idea is that you're going to go work as hard as you can. And you're going to try to pull your own people in. So you're out every day flyering. So it's not just like the festival.
Right.
The Edinburgh Fringe Festival isn't necessarily like, putting up posters for you every night. Like it's like a boot camp, like you go through that and it's hard. And the people that have come out of it are some of the best performers, in the world. Eddie Izzard is one of the great examples of an Edinburgh Fringe person. I try to rip them off every time I try to be funny, and
yeah, well,
but that's Edinburgh. So now the smaller fringes, like that's the big one. The smaller fringe, Reykjavik, Gothenburg, they're only like a week long usually. And so you only get a few performances. And that is a little more supportive of all the shows together. Like they're trying to, usually those smaller festivals are trying to build it within the city. Reykjavik is not known as an arts town, with all due respect to it. I'm not criticizing it, but it's not, it's something else. So the Reykjavik Fringe people in the community are trying to build and expand this festival out, and they'll give you more of a push. They'll help you promote your show. They're not going to put you up, and they're not going to, give you lunch maybe, but like
right.
They'll help push your show a little bit to the city at large. Gothenburg is the same way.
Is there any music that you would want to have listeners listen to on the way out? And does that music, or any of that music, have a life within your one-man shows? And has any of that music existed in maybe all of your shows? Or is every show have different pieces? Is it your music? Are they cover tunes? Or is it just, what are we getting musically from the bar singer, as you like to describe yourself?
Well, there is a couple of things that I do that I've done at like music concerts and poetry concerts, and it's been in some of my theatrical stuff. It's been in Asbury Park and Me, and it's been in The Thing in 2007, and has crept in a little bit during Harmonica Lesson, the show. I do this solo blues thing where I'm just playing straight, like street style, if you will, and I'm singing, and it's like a shout singing, and it's something I've been doing since the late 90s, or actually the mid 90s, honestly, as part of my performance. It's like a storytelling, talking blues kind of thing with a bunch of shouting and kicking and screaming, and it's got a bit of a gospel thing to it.
If we piqued anyone's interest in what you do, you will be at Waterview Cafe in Barnegat on October 19th doing the show, Harmonica Lesson, the show. And I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll hear some more cool stories from you during that performance.
All right. Well, if you come, if you're listening to us talk right now and you want to hear some of these crazy things, they all pop up depending on who's in the audience in Harmonica Lesson, the show. All these adventures pop in somehow, or other they find their way into the show.
That's a great promo. All right, everybody. You can catch us Sunday night, 6:00 on WBNJ and anywhere you get your podcasts. James Dalton, thank you, sir. I look forward to seeing you in person because we're doing a remote on this one. And to all of our listeners, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Is that right? Well, loneliness, oh, you come and found me today. Oh, loneliness, come up and found me today. Made me feel so wrong in an unnatural way. Loneliness, why don't you leave me be? Loneliness, why don't you leave me be? Well, I want you to get on away. Get on away from me. This is the sound of loneliness getting away. Thanks so much. I'm done. I'm quit. I'm done.